Hello and welcome to Aviation 101 with Laura. Today we're going to talk about a difficult topic, but one that's important for you to know about if you're starting your aviation career or even if you're a little ways down the road. And that is, what if you mess up and something happens involving operating a motor vehicle and alcohol, drugs, impairment under either type of substance. So let's talk about that because it's kind of something that pilots don't like to talk about. So what happens if you mess up? Well, 14 CFR 61.15 says you have to report certain items to the FAA, and we will talk about what needs to be reported. I am not a lawyer. I'm not providing legal advice. If you find yourself in a difficult situation, what I do want you to know is it is not like you are grounded from aviation for life. But it will go better for you if you do some things in the simple reporting that the FAA says you need to do. What you have to report is called motor vehicle actions, or MVAs. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but I can read the regulation, and my goal with this is to unpack it for you. So you should look this up, because if it involves something that you did, look up 14 CFR 61.15c, and that says that motor vehicle action, and this is not a comprehensive list, but is a conviction, notice conviction, for violating federal or state statutes relating to operating a motor vehicle while intoxicated, impaired, under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Okay, or license cancellation relating to intoxication or impairment, and or revoking or suspending your license if you fail a chemical test or refuse to chemical test. So like you're suspected of being intoxicated and you just plain refuse to test. If your state then revokes or suspends your driver's license even for as little as 1 day, that's a reportable item under this list from 14 CFR 61.15c. Again, this is not a comprehensive list, so you got to look up the regulations. But there's other things in that list. Okay, but what I want to point out here is it's convictions, cancellations, revoking, suspension. Just an arrest, like if you get arrested, that is technically not a required reporting item. You can still report it to be on the safe side, but technically it's not required to report an arrest. But if it leads to conviction or these other things, then it's reportable. Please note that each action requires a separate notification. Okay, example. Say you get arrested for a DWI one time. The arrest doesn't require notification, but if you are convicted, that's a notification. And if associated with that same arrest, your license is revoked or suspended, then another notification is required. So that would be 2 notifications for the one event that occurred. So again, each action the FAA says you have to report within 60 calendar days. So you have to report within 60 calendar days each motor vehicle action. Like I just described, you could have one thing that happened, but then several actions come out of that thing. So you could have conviction, and then you could have suspension or revocation of your license. Again, you have to report this to the FAA within 60 calendar days. They have a very convenient online form. I'll put a link to their website in the video description. You can also write them a letter, and you can also fax a letter, but you have to report it within 60 days, calendar days. Again, I have links in the video description. That is not where it ends though, okay? If you are then later going to get an FAA medical, you would fill out the Med Express form. I've got some other videos about Med Express and different things with getting a medical, so check those out. But that form has a box you have to check that allows the FAA to check your driving record from the National Driver Register. And let's say you completely forgot to report to the FAA this happened and you got convicted, you thought, oh, I forgot about that, shoot, okay, they will find anything you did not report. And that is bad. We're going to talk about what happens if you don't report. You also, this is another thing that tends to mess people up. If you don't report it, you have to continue to report it on all subsequent medical applications. So like every time you have to continue to report whatever happened. So let's say it happened 20 years ago. You've gotten 5 medicals since. You have to report every single time on every single medical. If you don't report it, that's grounds for other issues, which we're going to talk about. So here's an example. This is the MedExpress form is totally digitized, but this is what it's going to be asking you. It is box 18, V as in Victor. And there is where you're going to have to mark yes and then give an explanation under that part. And also notice that 20 is where you are authorizing the FAA to do that National Driver Register search. Okay, so let's talk about what if you don't report, like let's say you think you're going to try to hide something. Okay, unfortunately, if you don't report, the FAA will formally investigate. Very often they find this when they do the National Driver Registry search from the medical. So there is a separate office, separate from the medical office within the FAA, that is an office specifically for investigating airmen who don't report. If you don't report, it is grounds for the FAA to suspend or revoke your certificates and ratings. You can, again, look that up. Furthermore, if they find you separately from this found lying on your MedExpress form, you can possibly lose all your certificates and be fined up to $250,000 and possibly go to prison. Don't do that. And don't try to hide it because they will find out. So let's say, okay, you're like, oh gosh, I screwed up. I messed up and I got convicted, but I did my report. Okay, what is going to happen to me? All right, the good news is, from what I am told, again, I don't work for the FAA and I am not a lawyer, but what I am told is if it's like your first and the only time this happened to you, you totally screwed up, you realize it was a bad mistake of your life, if it's only one time, it is unlikely to result in the FAA completely taking your certificate away if you reported it correctly and you didn't try to hide it. Okay, if you report correctly but the FAA starts seeing a pattern developing, what the FAA themselves actually says in their own literature is expect the FAA to take certificate action if you have 2 motor vehicle actions within a 3-year period. So typical, they may suspend your pilot certificate for 120 days. Again, it's not like grounds of aviation expulsion for life, but what they notice is a pattern, and that leads to pilots taking risky other choices while flying, and the FAA is acting in the interest of the safety of the flying public. So what I want the takeaway is, report it. It's much better to report than not report, because if you don't report, then they will begin suspending your certificate, very likely. If you are intending to hide it and they find out through the MedExpress form, there are, like I just talked about, other bad consequences. Now, you might be like thinking, okay, what about other motor vehicles? Aha, well, the FAA has thought about this as well. And so this is a little weird. It depends on your state's laws. Again, I'm not a lawyer. I have no idea what state you're in, but motor vehicles could also include boats, golf carts, 4-wheelers, ATVs, snowmobiles, snow machines, and anything else that your state considers to be a motorized vehicle. This is not a comprehensive list. So just don't think that just because it wasn't in a car, truck, van, SUV, motorcycle, fill in the blank, it could very well still count as a motor vehicle action if you were doing any of these operating any of these other vehicles. So take note of that as well. And I do recommend reporting even if you think, oh, they might not need to know about this, it isn't bad to report. They're not going to go after you just because you reported something that was not reportable. In fact, what I've been told is they will reply back and say, thank you for reporting that. It actually was not reportable, but thank you for reporting that. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe because it gets the word out. And I love to hear from you with listener feedback. Telling me what you'd like to hear about in other aviation related topics, and have a good day.